God, Creator, I thank you for this beautiful day today. I thank you for my health. I ask today, Creator, for health and healing as I move through my journey of life. Creator, I ask that you show me and guide me, allow me to try to do the next right thing, and allow your Spirit to help guide me. And I ask you, Creator, to remove all the things that aren't you so that I can feel your presence and walk in this life and learn my lessons through the challenges and maybe the mistakes that I make. And I thank you, Creator, for my life and bringing all these beautiful people here, and giving me, an ability, and Janine, an ability to be able to articulate things in a way that people understand. And I ask for a new experience in you, Creator, in the program and in my fellows and in your universe. I ask that you just guide us in a good way and allow us to share our experiences that are best useful tonight for ourselves to grow and learn, get closer to you and anybody on the screen. And I also ask for prayers for that struggling alcoholic or addict, or that person that suffers from the spiritual malady that doesn't know how to get out of it, that you maybe shine that light in there somewhere and let us all be little beacons of light. Thank you, Creator. Hi. Amen.
God, thank you for tonight and getting together to talk about the solution to recovery, which is ultimately a connection with you. Thank you for the fear that you helped me to work through and to continue to do things that I'm afraid of, and help me to be outside of my comfort zone more times than I like to be. Please be with anybody tonight who is struggling and searching within themselves for answers on how to navigate situations, decisions that need to be made. Family members, how to interact with them as Christmas comes up. Be with people who are just struggling with Christmas in general. And allow everyone here to find something in here that answers something or gives comfort in some way. And that we can leave here and have something to pass forward to the next person who's struggling, because ultimately that's the goal, is that we want to carry the message to the people who need it, and to be carrying the message to everyone that we come across, whether it's sponsorship or just being something that's attractive, that we're just in our own behavior and our attitudes, that it's just something that people want, even if they can't put their finger on it, and they come and in that they believe in the solution that we're trying to carry to everyone. Amen.
Okay, Zoom user.
Father God, I come to you tonight to thank you for everything in my life, all the lessons and the blessings that you provide daily in my life. I want to give you gratitude for everything that I've become and guiding me along the way. May you now open my heart and open my ears and close my mouth, so that I may receive the gifts of knowledge through Bill and his partner there. May you please bless everybody out struggling still, and guide us to help one another and to become the best versions of ourselves. I ask these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
Ryder, you're up.
Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here tonight, bringing us all together. Thank you for the life that you have showed me. Thank you for walking with all of us out of the darkness and standing with us in the light. May you watch over our families and allow each and every one of us to make it home to our families each and every day. Heavenly Father, thank you for bringing us here tonight so that we can better understand this sickness and this spiritual malady that we all suffer from, to bring awareness to the people that are still out there struggling on the street. May you watch over them tonight and guide them, guide us, direct us each and every day. Heavenly Father, in your name we pray, amen.
Okay. Awesome. So we're going to start on page 25. Top of the page, 3 lines down, there's a solution. And for anyone that hasn't been with us, just kind of a quick recap. We're really focusing on the spiritual malady in the study. Yes, of course, we talk about the substance. We went heavily through the doctor's opinion and talked about the alcoholic cycle. And, you know, the spiritual malady is the most important thing, i.e. defects of character, i.e. self. And when we get to this part of the book where it says there is a solution, most of us think that, okay, there's a solution to my drinking or drugging problem. And yeah, there is. But really, it's saying there's a solution to the spiritual malady. And the solution of the spiritual malady starts later in this textbook. But it kind of alludes to it here in step 1. So we've gone through a lot of step 1. And then right here, it's saying, okay, here's what it is. And it's referring to something that's further up in the textbook. But we'll touch base on that. And, you know, by focusing on the spiritual solution, you know, you don't want to drink again. And when you build a real relationship with God, not a theoretical one, right? A real relationship through practical application. And you think of the word spiritual, ritual. It's the rituals of what you do in your life that will bring the spiritual to your life. And when the spiritual falls off, then it's just the ritual. And the rituals never stop. That's why we talk about spiritual disciplines. The discipline of what we're doing is so important. A lot of us wait for motivation and we want to be motivated. And sometimes in early recovery and different parts of our recovery, we are motivated. But motivation always wears off. A discipline cannot wear off. That's why it's a discipline. And through the disciplines, you will get what this literature in this program really has to offer. Last week, you know, I got some messages back saying, you know, you helped explain my anger and you helped explain this and you helped explain that. I get odd messages here and there after a study, right? And I'm telling you, I used to be a really violent and angry human being. And my lust was like out of control in my fucking first and a half, second year of recovery. And like through the willingness to do what these books have taught me to do, this one and the 12 and 12, you know, and I got to be careful because Creator shows me who's boss, but in many ways, I've been restored to sanity in my anger and in my lust and in my judgment and all these other things. And over time, this stuff works for everything in your life. And it clears away what's not God, which is anger, lust, porn, gambling, all the shit that makes you do these things. There's reason why we need to seek relief. The ego needs relief. And when the ego needs relief, it's never satisfied. And when you think of the word ego, E-G-O, it's edging God out. It's absence of love because God is love. And when we act in these things, we're actually acting in a fear, and then it perpetuates more. And we'll get more into that as this study goes along. But anyway, anything?
Yeah, I was just thinking about, I have a friend right now and she's not an alcoholic, just struggling with emotional disturbances all over the place, like anxiety and depression. And recently she's gotten into some work stuff and the situations are baffling to her, you know, where I talked to her and now I would have been unable to support her in a way that I would have believed what I was saying. And now I can easily give suggestions that make sense to her. In some way, she is attracted to what I have, although she's not an alcoholic. But the solutions that this program has given me to be able to give to the people in my life, people are attracted to that. And when they take the suggestions, which isn't always, there's there's healing, there's effectiveness in what's being offered in this book for those types of situations. And so anyways, I got into a conversation with her about like, just do the steps, you know, and we've had this conversation about a dozen times in the last few months. And because she keeps coming to me for these solutions to the problems she can't solve. And I said, like, just do the fucking steps already. And she said, okay, I'm going to get a book. And she goes, but what exactly does this help you with? Like, besides the alcohol, like, and I said, everything. Like, it's helped with everything. I told her about a girl that I met through Bill, actually, in the last study he did. And she came along with a family member and she did the steps and it cured her depression. And so I was telling my friend about this, and this is what it does, is I don't have anxiety anymore, and I don't have depressive episodes anymore. And I have a way out of fear. I have a lot of fear. Like, since I've done my steps, I realize how much fear is in everything that a human being is doing, but I can notice it and I can move through that with the help of a spiritual experience, and relying on God. And so anyways, I talked about this with her, and then I sent her the step 9 promises, and I'm sure she's not going to just jump on going through the steps, but she's definitely attracted to it, and she's contemplating, you know, her next move. And she continues to come towards me with this stuff, and it's been effective for every aspect of my life, which is why I'm so passionate about it. And I believe that it leaks into everything that we're doing in all of our affairs, and it's helped me with parenting tremendously. It's a solution, like the solutions in this book, beyond what it is for the alcoholic. Like, the practical application of these steps is something even my teenagers are attracted to, and come to me for answers and advice now. So if you're struggling with anything, like, there's so much more to this than just the alcohol. That was just a symbol of the problem. And so now we get into the solution of the spiritual malady.
So I just want to touch base on something. So when you and I met, like, it was about a year ago or so now, right? And Janine had been around the program before, like, a few times, and she was in the rooms and she did whatever the program was before. And then this time around, she's seen that it's actually not what she thought it was. So, you know, when I said earlier that we may go against what the rooms say, because I really do believe the rooms are carrying a message of just don't drink, trying to practice abstinence. Well, how do you fucking stay abstinent from alcohol and drugs when you don't have the power? How do you stay abstinent from anger? How do you stay abstinent from lust? And these things are powerful, and they drive us, and they kind of come up out of nowhere, and they cause us great harm. And if I don't get a handle on, like, the anger, the lust, the self-pity, the bulimia and overeating and all of these other things, I will drink again, because I'm acting in self, I'm acting in that ego. So I'd like, if Janine is able to maybe just articulate, like, you know, the old way that she was learning and how it didn't work. And she then went and tried every other way there was, and ended up having to come back here like a while back. And now the message that she heard is different, and it's actually been the game changer. Would you be able to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah. I guess the first thing is that I was younger. I was in my mid-20s when I first went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was attracted immediately to some of the stuff, not all of it, but some of it. And the solutions made sense to me because I had grown up in church. So I really already believed in some of the spiritual solutions that it suggests, you know, with forgiveness instead of holding a resentment and keying a vehicle or whatever, you know, like, forgiveness is the right approach that I know. So there was that. And so I did the things, I took what I wanted and I left the rest. And I also didn't have a full understanding about what defects really were. And I knew what they were, but I didn't know how to remove them. And I thought that 6 and 7 was like a, okay, do and check, and then we're done. And because I was so young, I don't think I had the desperation of a drowning man yet. And then I went on to work into a field that has all kinds of mixed messages. And, you know, I think that a lot of times people come into the rooms to get healing, but they really just want a quick fix. you know, they think they want to get better, but they want the quick fix. And I was kind of that. I was like, oh, there's something easier. There's, you know, there's this type of way, or there's a pill for that, or there's, and so I started just trying everything else because I didn't want to concede to my innermost self that I could never drink again. And I chased that delusion into the gates of insanity for sure, where I ended up, you know, the hospital was the better way. It was the end of the road for me, where I just couldn't do it anymore. There was no material fix. There was no pill. There was no therapy. I had tried, I mean, I feel like I have tried everything under the realm of new ideas and medicines and doctors. And I really exhausted myself trying to figure it out. And part of that is because there's so much out there, and there's lots of advertising and marketing and money in the pharmaceutical world. And people want to be fixed and they want to be better right away. And this is a lifelong process, and it takes a lot of work. And I don't think that people, when there's an option to take a pill and then there's doing the hard work, people seem to choose the pill more than they want to buckle down and do the hard work, because it is the idea of the instant gratification or the quick fix. And the pain is so great, you know, like that anything that will provide a relief right now, we're going to be grabbing at. And so I had to grab at everything. I had to grab at all of the things that I could think of. And then I came back to this. And the way that I came back to this, because like Bill said, I actually thought that I did the steps and that they didn't really work for me. And I just really didn't think that that was something that I got any relief from, but I really wasn't doing it properly. And I became willing to try it again, because I ended up in a treatment center, and my counselor, she had said to me, you know, I don't know what else I can tell you that you haven't heard before, that you don't know. And that kind of makes me nervous, but I can give you what worked for me. And she said, I've been on the streets for 22 years and all I did was the steps. I worked in, you know, like the violent life, and there was, you know, anything that comes with the streets, and I should have PTSD, and I should be, you know, not sober. I should be dead. And all I did was the steps. And she just took my hand, and she was like pleading with me with her eyes. And she's just like, this worked for me. If you take my suggestions, I promise this will work for you. All I did was go into the rooms. I used the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, and all I did was the steps, and it worked for me. And I'm 8 years sober, and that's all I can do for you. But I promise if you do what I suggest, it'll work. And so I went back to my room that night, and I was laying in bed, and I was thinking, you know, like that really does go against all of, you know, the things I hear about the trauma brain, and about relearning things, and about just the amount of work it would take somebody to become restored after being on the streets for 22 years in that kind of world. The amount of therapy that would take, the amount of, you know, medicine and this and that would, and the PTSD and all these things. And I thought, and all she did was the fucking steps. And so I really pondered that, you know, in my bed that night. And I thought, you know, like, and I know she has a happy marriage, and I know that she's effective in her job. And I'm gonna really try to do the steps. And that's what actually got me convinced. And so for that time in treatment, I did nothing but what was in this book. I didn't even read any nonfiction. Like, I just focused on this completely. And I went through it like I was a blank slate and had never been, like that whole set aside prayer. That was kind of like, and she kept saying, smash everything, smash everything. And so every time I would come up with, like, because my mind wanted to go to like a different therapy or a different theory or a different, you know, type of thing that I had heard or done or tried. And she would go smash, smash. And I realized how many old ideas, you know, and it talks about that later in We Agnostics, about the things that get in the way that block us from God, and old beliefs is like, to me, everything comes back to an old belief. When I'm working with somebody, or I'm talking to somebody, or I'm going through my own stuff, I can always trace it back to what old belief is in my way about something. And so she just kept saying smash, and I kept going back to this book. And when I got out of treatment, that's how I met Bill, because I realized I only could explain up to step 5, because in the treatment center, we do 5, 6, 7, and then like you go through the steps so fast, and 5, 6, 7 are done in one session. And I didn't know how to explain them. And so I ended up at a meeting where they were reading some Drop the Rock stuff. And I'm like, this still isn't helpful. Like, I still don't know what I'm doing. And so I ended up at a meeting where Bill was, and he was talking about why we do step 6 and 7, and like especially 6, and how step 10 is restoring us when we're, and I got so hooked on like, this is going to restore me to my authentic self. And this is the way out, is that every time that I don't act in defect, this is what he was saying that night, every time I don't act in defect, I'm actually giving myself a new experience through God. And those are little increments of me being healed and restored back to the person I was always intended to be before life broke me and before the defects twisted up the person that I was always meant to be in God and in love. And I just heard that, and it's hard to believe that this guy said that, because it sounds so loving and godly. But that I was like, that's it. That is what I want, and that's the why for me. And then from there, and I contacted him, and I was just like, then we became friends, and yeah, like I think that this is the whole thing of it, is the deconstruction of self, and how this process, why it's so painful. You know, later in the 12 by 12 in step 7, where it talks about the emotional turmoil before the surrender. Well, I've had to do that with every defect that I come up against. It's like, there's like this pain I put myself through for whatever reason. It's like, I see the defect, but that doesn't mean I just turn it over. I have to go through the pain to get the emotional surrender. And it's been like that. And he was able to say it goes like this, and that's been helpful to know what's coming up and how to get through that, and that this defect thing, it's a complicated, tricky business, and our defects, it's subtly and blindly we get driven by this shit. And I believe in this so strongly that I just got into it. And now, since I've been doing this, it was about a year into my recovery, I would say, where I was able to start adding back my work stuff and the stuff that actually was effective. Interestingly enough, it fit right into the 12 steps, like stuff with attachment theory that I like. There's a couple things in my career that have been really effective, and I can see now, because I can fit them over top of the steps, and they fit now. And so the steps have actually given me a framework on what to pull and what's been effective and why. And I understand it now through this literature. So it's been pretty fascinating, this whole process. And it has become a framework for what I even want to do, like as I move back into work in Calgary here. And it's been easy to pick what I want to apply for in the direction that I want to go, because this book just has given me an idea of the things that are true with God. I would say, like God is truth and love, and to be able to know what is the formula for that, and to go out into the world and to see where that fits has been much, much easier. So it's given me a clarity in my professional life as well that is invaluable. That was a long answer, but
That was
that
a
was the
fucking
whole
perfect
answer.
answer. And if you guys have any questions as we go, just unmute and bring them up, and we'll try to answer them. And if they take too long, we'll deal with them at the end of the study. Okay, let's rock and roll.
Okay. So there is, at the top of 25-second paragraph, there is a solution. Almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings with the process requires for its successful consummation. But we saw that it really worked with others, and we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living. When, therefore, we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence, of which we had never even dreamed. The great fact is just this, and nothing less, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences, which have revolutionized our whole attitude toward life, toward our fellows, and toward God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is absolutely certainly that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in the way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do for ourselves. If you are seriously alcoholic as we were, we believe there is no middle of the road solution. We were in a position where life was becoming impossible, and we had passed into a region where there is no return through human aid. We had but two alternatives. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation as best as we could, and the other to accept spiritual help. This We did because we honestly wanted to, and we're willing to make an effort.
Okay, so there's the solution. Notice that it's in italics, going back to page 25. Janine alluded to like some of the pain that we must go through, right? We've been brought up in a society where we're told to avoid pain at all costs. Here, you can take this, you can do this, go here, do this, and have no pain. Get it out of your life. Well, we're human beings that have been designed to have these emotions and to be able to navigate and learn and deal with pain. So we're kind of dishonoring our own consciousness when we don't learn how to deal with pain. But you have now many, many years of our society teaching us don't have to go through pain, which is a farce. When you want real recovery and you want to grow and learn about who you are, pain is necessary. There's a line in the step 10 in the 12 and 12. It says the pains of drinking had to come before sobriety and inner turmoil before serenity. So I'm working with this lady. I've been working with her for about 8 months now, and she is going through some severe pain. And like from my perspective, as I talk to her, and she doesn't really like hearing this, but she's actually more receptive to it than other people have been. Like as far as the pain goes and the growth and where she is and the decisions that she's got to make, I'm like, you're right on track, man. You're right on track. As shitty as that sounds, that's where she's learning and growing. And it has to be that way. And I can't take that part away for her. I can't tell her, okay, take this advice and avoid that and go do this. No. She knows the decisions that she's got to make in her life. We've done enough work so she can go inside and go, okay, where do you not want me? And it's actually in that situation. It's in a relationship situation that she's really made a mess of. But when she got into this relationship, she was a different person. So she used all of her old skills, I'm going to say defects, her old tools and coping mechanisms, her old belief systems to get in this relationship. And then through this last 8 or 9 months, like she's had a full 180 in what she thinks and believes. And the most beautiful part is she sees the value within herself, and she's not like accepting the things outside of herself as what gives her the value. And this person used to like really make a lot of money, and like she's fairly attractive, and you know, blah, 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 the list goes on. But even with all those things, when you look in the mirror and you're not happy with yourself, you're still not happy with yourself. So she's learning, right? And I talked to her today and I said, like, you know, the decisions you got to make. And I'm like, we've both known for a long time. And until you make those decisions and you trust God and you step into the unknown so that you can quit dishonoring your own truth, you're gonna be in this pain. But at least you're not gonna drink or use, as far as I can tell. And that's just kind of the way it has to be. And I can't do anything, right? And she's not running away from me as her sponsor. She's actually staying close. And I just keep reiterating the same thing. The beatings continue till the lesson is learned. And the beatings are continuing and the lesson is learned, but she's too afraid to take that action because she's tied to the emotional security, material security, companionship. She's got some daughters in there. And like we all try to manage, and like we're worried about all aspects of these things so we won't make those choices, right? So when we read this line, there's a solution. Almost none of us like the self-searching, leveling our pride, confessions of our shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Most people don't know what that line is saying. That line is saying that you're not going to like the process because it is painful. It's self-searching. You're looking within yourself to find out what isn't you. The leveling of our pride. So we're talking about steps 4 and 5 right there. That's where it says the confessions of our shortcomings. What's the process requires? The process of growing out of the spiritual malady starts in the 4 and the 5. That's why when you do a step 3, but you don't do a step 4, you're actually back at step 2. You're not really even at a step 3. Because a step 3, you don't know what your will in your life is. You don't even have really an inclination. what actually happens is your brain thinks it does, but you don't, because it reveals itself in the 4. So a person that's done only the first 3 steps, they're actually only on step 2. There's just a willingness to believe. And that step 3 is just all ego, really. There's some, I'm going to say there's some commitment there from the subconscious, but really you can't see the truth until you put pen to paper in the step 4. And then the confessions of the shortcomings comes through your step 5, where you get more humility, you get more pain in admitting these things that aren't serving you anymore. And then it goes, but we really saw that it worked in others. And that's part of that attraction that Janine's friend has to Janine. Like, something's working in her, and this woman's known Janine a long time. And that's kind of like with me too. I know a lot of people and they want whatever it is. And I just did the steps, and I continue to work the steps in a practical application where God's not a theory every day. Okay. And we had to come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. That's an important line. I came to believe in the hopelessness and futility of my life long before I ever came to believe in anything else. But I knew my life was futile and I wasn't happy. I just didn't know how to get out of it. And I was trying all the things that society taught me. And I didn't really want a relationship with God. And I thought people that were religious that talked about God or creator or whatever were weak. So that old idea kept me blocked off entirely. When therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. My sponsor. So also me to some people, Janine to some people. A lot of these problems are solved, right? There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. We have found much of heaven, and we have been rocketed into the 4th dimension of existence, of which we had not even dreamed. And I remember when I first read this line, the 4th dimension of existence, I was like pretty new, like a few months in, and I hated this line because I actually thought that the program was trying to brainwash me to become religious. And then I remember sharing this later on, and some old timers said, I said, you know, this program is just brainwashing me, isn't it? And he's like, maybe your brain needs a good fucking washing. And I sat there and went, kind of right. I think my brain does need a washing. Needs to be put in the sink and scrubbed, and let's get all the old shit out of there because it's not working, right? And that had an impact on me, that little comment of his snarkiness. The great fact is just this, and honestly, this is my life today. And I never believed this. I used to think shit like this was just a selling feature of God, like marketing God. But I can honestly say that I believe this paragraph today. This is the great fact of my life most of the time when self doesn't get in the way. And nothing less, that I've had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized my whole attitude towards life.
Can we talk about that for 1 sec?
Sure,
I
go
just
for it.
want to say that the deep and effective spiritual experiences kind of tie into what you were saying up at the top there, where they're painful. The deep spiritual experiences are often really, really painful. Like where I hit a really, really profound turning point in recovery, and I've had maybe 3 that have been just so dark and just lots of unknown. And I'm sort of in one right now where I need to make a move, and it's a fearful step into the next thing, but I have some faith now behind me that I did this before. And I used to use Bill's faith because he had left a job that he was on, and he kind of went into the unknown in the same type of way that I was trying to do when I moved to Calgary. And I left my whole life behind me in Medicine Hat. And so at the beginning there, I was just using Bill's story and his faith and that things worked out for him. And that was like very dark because I didn't have my own little light in me yet. And I was really holding on to a couple of people that I believed that this stuff had worked for them, right? Like it's talking about where that this has worked in other people. And so that was my starting place, that I was using someone else's faith and other people's ideas and experiences until I could have my own. And like now looking back, the profound experiences where I've really gotten deeper in my connection with God has happened through these painful, dark alleys of my recovery. And yeah, it wasn't just, skipping through a prairie and the do. It was like, I'm in the dark and I'm, not wanting to get out of bed, and I'm indecisive and I'm full of fear and I don't know which direction to turn, and I can racing thoughts. And, these things have happened in where the only thing, and my sponsor said, you never know that God is all you need till God is all you got. And that's what I was really clinging to. It's on my fridge. And the last turning point there where I needed to make a move. And it's like, talk about the emotional turmoil before the surrender. Like, that's what it's like. It's like, for me, I was, okay, I got to do this. I got to, and I don't know, the ego is just, I think of it like the Wicked Witch of the West, where every time I do some of this stuff, it kind of melts a bit, but it can rebuild itself so quick. When we're drinking as alcoholics, we quit so many times for real. We swear it off so many times for real, but 3 days later we're drinking again and we forget what it was like. Like, that's how fast the ego rebuilds. So anyways, like when I see something that in somebody that they have, I know now that they went through these painful things. Like, you don't just get to a place with God easy like that. Like, you got to go through the God. I think for me, I had to lean on him to get connected to him. And those moments have been scary. And it's like going to the gym, and I see somebody that I want that physique. I don't just want that physique and then go say, hey, how'd you get that physique? And then just not do any of the things. Like, I have to follow that fitness plan and do those things to get that physique. And it's kind of the same way with recovery. It's like there is some work involved in it and a process involved in it. And the steps have taken me through that. And I found in the steps what I could never find in church, because there was no outline. It was like, here's God, go find him. And I could never really get him in church. And the steps have given me a way to move through these spiritual moments and move into God instead of away from God, or towards the next fix to get me out of myself. I know that I need to go through the pain. And that's been the difference, is knowing the pain's going to come and knowing how to get through it, and knowing that it's necessary for me to get to the next level of what I need to be doing. And so pain now is like welcomed, it's expected, and it's now opportunities to grow and to do the thing I need to do. So my perception of what I need, like of pain itself, life is difficult and recovery is going to be painful. And in knowing that, there's a relief, knowing that these things are coming and that the pain is going to come and that that's part of it. And if there is no pain, you're just in your comfort zone. There's no change. You're doing the same thing that you're always doing. And so welcome the pain, because that means that you're on the edge of something better. You're on the edge of change, and that to change, that this book tells me over and over, change is going to be really painful. And I got to have the pain to get to the next place. I got to deconstruct the ego, like the myself has to fall to pieces and be restored, rebuilt. And, the language in this book talks about that as well. Like, we're demolishing and rebuilding, and that is a painful process, but the end result is something great. And so to welcome the pain and don't be scared of it and lean into it. And yeah.
No, that's amazing. And that's the truth, right? It really is. So the great fact is just this and nothing left, that we have had deep and effective spiritual experiences which have revolutionized our whole attitude towards life, towards our fellows in God's universe. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and our lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. And as Janine was kind of talking about the pain, and we talk about the spiritual, as we go through the pain, we often want to just pry and manage and figure it out and avoid it. We're trying to change everything and figure it out. But once you kind of settle in that this is part of the process, you learn that the spiritual disciplines are most important. Am I in fear? I have an inventory process. Let's do the fear. Am I in resentment? I have a resentment inventory. I'm in relationship turmoil. I have relationship conduct. I have pillars. I have God. I have meditation. I have all these things. And these clear-cut directions later in this book allow me to go through the pain doing the things. And when I say the theory of God does not keep you sober or relieve you of the spiritual malady, that's what I mean. Like a lot of us get into this emotionalism. We wallow in emotionalism and we mistaken it for true religious feeling. But that's not what we're talking about. It has to come through practical application of doing the things. Even when it seems like it's the wrong things to do, we don't veer off the plan. We don't veer off the process. The process reveals and gives the results. And the results are here. This is the fourth dimension. And through the processes, it removes everything that's not God. And I'll say, you know, there's a line in step 11 where it says our thought life will be placed on a much higher plane when our thinking is cleared of wrong motives. That's kind of like a key line. Your thought life, your consciousness will be placed on a higher plane when your thinking is cleared of you and how you can have or not have or whatever it is. And when you quit manipulating the world to try to give you whatever it is you think you want, you are now relinquishing self. And your thought life gets placed on a higher plane of consciousness. And where you can see the map of consciousness is on Google. If you Google map of consciousness, you will see that our world that we live in out here, it vibrates at a level of 175, which is pride and fear and anger. And, you know, some of it feels okay compared to the lower levels, but that's what our society lives in. The goal for us is to rise above 175, and you will see the different levels and get up into the love one. And where love is it's pretty high up there. But through these spiritual disciplines that we use here, our thought life is placed on a higher plane. And our thinking is cleared of our own selfish motives, and we become naturally of service to our fellows. And then God's no longer a theory, and the fucking fourth dimension is something real. And then you can live there for the most part. And every time you don't live in the fourth dimension, okay, now there's another lesson for you to learn. And you may have to, you know, level your pride some more, confessions of your shortcomings. You may have to do more of this, which is a requirement. You don't just finish your steps and move on. These steps are worked in the moment by moment aspect of every interaction with life that we have. That's where step 10 comes in. And step 10 is the most misconstrued, misunderstood step in the program, probably the most important for the fourth dimension access. And then you can actually get into real serious good meditation. And then step 12 becomes just a natural part of the path.
Because when you're doing the step 10s, the idea is that your 4 and your 5 is clearing the channel, and then you're relinquishing your defects to clear the channel, so that in step 11 you have the channel, so that your mind is intuitively connected to God, so that you have the God intuition, the God conscious that it talks about. That's done through relinquishing self. And so step 10 keeps self out of the way, so that you can stay connected to God through prayer and meditation in step 11.
And 4. And we'll get much more into all of this too as we keep going. So let's keep going. So if you're seriously as alcoholic as we were, or you suffer from the spiritual malady like we do, then there is no middle of the road solution. This isn't like a half game. You do this half-ass, you get less than half-ass results. This is an all-in game, which is why the fellowship of the Spirit, you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. So what that's saying on page 164, last paragraph, is it says, abandon yourself to God through the work. Admit your faults to him and your fellows. Admit your faults. Look at these shortcomings. Look at these things that I've done in this world that I'm not happy about. You know, clear away the wreckage of my past. Go make amends. Go make this right. Work that step 6, 7, 8, and 9. Give freely of what you find and join us. So then you give it away. And you give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit. Not the fellowship of just don't drink. Not the fellowship if you just have a desire not to drink, you're a member. Yeah, that's great. But that ain't keeping you sober. And if you want to rely on meetings to keep you sober and not ever get into the fourth dimension, fuck, I have pity on you. Because there's so much more to life than going to meetings and white knuckling your sobriety and trying to self-will these principles into your affairs when you don't need to. Right? So there is no middle of the road. This is an all-in game. And for the people that I work with, I fucking try to really implement, like, this is all in. Don't fuck around. Let's really do this to the utmost capacity. And like when me and Janine were building our friendship and she'd be calling in turmoil, and I've called her in situations too, but I couldn't sit there and just stroke her self-pity and say, you know what, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. No, it wasn't going to fucking be okay. And I think that's why I've been effective as a person in this program, that people kind of want what I have, or they're at least willing to listen, because I'm not there to tell you it's going to be okay. I'm going to tell you it's not going to be fucking okay. And when they keep doing the same thing, they see that I'm right. So then they're like, okay, what is it that I'm not doing that you're doing? Well, the results they're there. And that's when somebody really gets willing, because they hit the bottom of self and they can't stop drinking because they won't work on the self part. So I'll finish with this before I move on. And you'll hear this many times. Faith alone is insufficient. The idea of God insufficient. The concept of God insufficient. To be vital, to give you life, the best life, must be accompanied by self-sacrifice and unselfish constructive action. The self-sacrifice isn't, I just go help people. The self-sacrifice is understanding self. Selfish self-centeredness, self-centered fear, self-seeking, self-righteousness. It's understanding self and sacrificing that in the micro moments of your day with God's help, pillars helps, and the processes of the disciplines in this program, the inventories and whatever. That's how you sacrifice self. And then what happens? You are of unselfish constructive action to people. And it's just a natural part of the process. The only problem is the rooms aren't telling you that. The rooms are giving you some bunk advice. And when you can be that spearhead and you bring this word, what we're talking about, to the rooms, you're going to ruffle some fucking feathers. I'm a professional feather ruffler. But I don't stop because I see the truth, man. And it's true. And that's what Janine was actually attracted to when we had the conversation, and I wasn't fucking blowing smoke up your ass. I'm telling you the truth, that it ain't going to be okay. One was to go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of our intolerable situation. You will blot out the consciousness of your intolerable situation sober, with your defects of character, with men, with women, with sex, with porn. You will continually put things between you and you if you don't understand the program. And many people do that, man. They will blot out the consciousness of their intolerable situation because they're still not happy with who they are, with many different things. The best we could. The other is to accept spiritual help. And spiritual just doesn't mean pray. Inventory, to me, is the most important part of spirituality. When you look at spirituality in our world, most of spirituality doesn't involve deep, meaningful inventory like ours does. And most people who are wanting to do inventory within themselves, they're so blinded by the beliefs, the old ideas like Janine talked about within their own mind, that they can only go so far in the self-reflection. And they still have a lot of ideas that they think are good for them. So they don't actually extract those ideas that they think are good for them. They look at the ones that are bad. But in this program, working with somebody who's like cares more about your life than your feelings and your pillars, they're going to show you some of your ideas that you think are good for you, relationships, jobs, money, whatever it might be. They're going to be like, how is that good for you? They're going to challenge you. And we need that challenge, and accepting that people do care and they're going to challenge us is really important, because pride wants to say, you know what, fuck you. I don't want to hear that truth, because my truth is something else. And I think I can wrest satisfaction, happiness out of my truth. So I'm fucking out. And then they're out. And I've seen that happen. So the spiritual help, and this we did. Why? Because we honestly wanted to. And we were what? Willing to fucking make the effort. So you got to really want to change all in, and you got to be willing to make the effort through the action, through the practical application. This program isn't for people that need it or want it. It's for people that want it and do it. You can do this program and not really want it or need it, but if you do the program and you're open-minded, this will change your fucking life. And it's only through the actions, not through the theory. Okay. So anything before we shut her down?
We're gonna take a break, but before that, I just wanted to say that a lot of people come in, like I hear it in the rooms with the resentments toward the church that they were raised in and whatnot, and I was the same. And I was the same because I couldn't find God in church. I couldn't make sense of how to get there. And now, since I've done this stuff, and since my grandma's passed, like Bible verses, I had a sponsee the other day, we were doing some step work at my house, and out of the blue, she hands me this, this little thing she had laminated. It was just, if you are for God, then who can be against you? And I said, hey, that's a Bible verse. My grandma says this all the time. And she said, really? And I said, yeah. And these Bible verses have been coming in just the funniest ways, where, you know, she just literally pulled it out of her bag and handed it to me. And it was one of my grandma's favorite church songs. You know, if you're with God, then who can ever be against you? And so it comes back to me, and I've developed now an appreciation and an understanding for the Bible stuff in a way that I never could have before. And now it's so relevant. And that's what I mean about this stuff has given me the connection to God. And now that's opened up a whole nother like understanding of the Bible in a different way. And when it says, be quick to see where religious people are right, it's like, now I can see it in so many ways, where before it was such a stretch. So yeah, we can break.
Okay. So we're getting into the story here. The story is about a guy named Roland Hazard. Roland Hazard is vitally important to how the big book Alcoholics Anonymous came to be. Roland actually worked with Ebby, and Ebby was the one who got Bill sober through the Oxford group, or at least came to his house kind of explaining some things. And, you know, there's more to the story, but we won't get into it because there's a lot of pieces to connect. But this is Roland Hazard's story, this certain American businessman. And as we kind of get into this story, you're going to see that they contacted a psychologist, a very famous one, Carl Jung. A lot of us know who he is. And the thing about Carl Jung was Roland Hazard's family was super rich, and they actually tried to get Freud to work with them. But Freud was too busy. And so the family had to go to the second most famous psychologist, which was Carl Jung. The thing about Freud is if Roland Hazard went to Freud, Freud didn't believe in the spiritual aspect, right? He believed in self-will, that we can do this ourselves. And had that happened, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And there's a whole bunch of history in all of this, and I implore you to look that up because it's pretty fascinating how it all came to be. So we'll kind of dissect a little more of that. But yeah, let's go.
A certain American businessman had ability, good sense, and high character. For years, he had floundered from one sanitarium to another. He had consulted the best-known American psychiatrist. Then he had gone to Europe, placing himself in the care of the celebrated physician and psychiatrist, Dr. Jung, who prescribed for him. Though experience had made him skeptical, he finished his treatment with an unusual confidence. His physical and mental condition were unusually good. Above all, he believed he acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he returned to this doctor whom he admired, and he asked him point blank why he could not recover. He wished above all things to regain self-control. He seemed quite rational and well balanced with respect to other problems, yet he had no control whatsoever over alcohol. Why was this? He begged the doctor to tell him the whole truth, and he got it. In the doctor's judgment, he was utterly hopeless. He could never regain his position in society, and he would have to place himself under lock and key or hire a bodyguard if he expected to live long. That was the great physician's opinion. But this man still lives and is a free man. He does not need a bodyguard, nor is he confined. He can go anywhere on this earth where other free men go without disaster, provided he remains willing to maintain a certain simple attitude. Some of our alcoholic readers may think that he could do without spiritual help. Let us tell you the rest of this conversation our friend had with his doctor. The doctor said, "You have the mind of a chronic alcoholic. I have never seen one single case recover where the state of mind existed to the extent that it does in you." Our friend felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. He said to the doctor, "Is there no exception?" "Yes," said the doctor, "there is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are phenomena. They appear to be the nature of a huge emotional displacement and arrangement. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes, which were once the guiding forces of the lives of men, are suddenly cast aside, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. In fact, I've been trying to produce some of such emotional rearrangement within you. With many individuals, the methods which I have employed are successful, but I have never been successful with an alcoholic of your description." Upon hearing this, our friend was somewhat relieved, for he reflected that, after all, he was a good church member. This hope, however, was destroyed by the doctor telling him that while his religious convictions were very good, in his case, that they did not spell the necessary vital experience.
Okay. So back on page 26, halfway down the page, above all, Roland, he believed that he had acquired such a profound knowledge of the inner workings of his mind and its hidden springs that relapse was unthinkable. Well, a lot of us do that, right? And, you know, maybe Janine, based on her old life and learning all of these like scientific ways, and I know not for me, because I didn't actually, this ain't my experience, but a lot of people think that because they've learned so much about the disease that they got it figured out. Right? The book says self-knowledge. It's a point we wish to emphasize and re-emphasize. That no matter how much you know about you or you know about the disease, that's not enough. And the result was, nevertheless, he was drunk in a short time. More baffling still, he could give himself no satisfactory explanation for his fall. So he learned from Carl Jung all these things about himself. And then he leaves Carl Jung after a year. And he's not even, so this is in Europe, he's not even on the boat yet to come back to America, and he's drunk. And he's baffled because he doesn't even know how he got drunk. Well, we read in previous pages, the mental blank spot, right? This inability to leave it alone, no matter how great the necessity or wish. At a certain point, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first drink. His defense must come from God. So he didn't have an effective mental defense, even though he knew a lot of things about himself. It didn't help him. So he relapses. He goes back to the doctor. He's begging the doctor, like, dude, basically Carl Jung's his higher power, right? Because it's his last resort. And he's begging the doctor, like, dude, why? How? I need help. Please help me. And Carl Jung's like, dude, you're one of those hopeless fucking alcoholics. There's really no hope for you. I don't really know what to tell you, bro. And so Roland Hazard is like getting scared because his only hope is like this doctor. And then, you know, it says, the doctor said, "You have a mind of a chronic alcoholic, Roland. I have never seen one single case recover where the state of mind exists to the extent that it does in you. Our friend has felt as though the gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. The doctor's saying, I got nothing for you, bro. I don't really know what to do. You're one of those. We're all rolling hazards. So this story's super important. And then what happened? The gates of hell had closed on him with a clang. Roland knew he was fucked, right? That's what the step one literature in this program does with the substance and with the defective character. And more so the defective character with, like, say, step 4 or 5. But the gates of hell have to close on you with a clang. You got to know that you don't have any more options. You're optioned out. That's what Roland felt. And he had a deep level concession that he was doomed. So that makes a person willing to seek a solution with the desperation of a drowning man. The problem with our program and people, alcoholics and addicts, is they never understand the true nature of their problem. They don't understand that they're actually doomed. And as you go through the step 1 literature, and if you've gone through it properly, you'll know you're doomed. And you will seek step 2 to 12 as the desperation of a drowning man.
I think too, like there's an example in the book where you could, like Dr. Bob, he was already, mingling with the Oxford group, and he was trying to have a spiritual experience, or was, like God was in there somewhere in the mix. And it took Bill to come and say, like, hey, like, this is what's going on. Once we drink, we get this phenomenon of the craving, and we got a mental blank spot. And that's the point at which the book says, at this point, he sought God out with an enthusiasm that he never had before, because he knew the nature of the illness. So it takes these pieces to all come together when you're working with someone in step 1. Like, they have to understand that it's the alcoholic, like we're allergic to alcohol, the phenomenon of the craving, the blank mental spot, and that we need a spiritual solution for the problem. And we need those 3 things there. And those are examples, like all the examples in this book, I think are divinely inspired, just the way that if you know the history, how this stuff has come together, it's amazing. But I think each character, each story is in there so intentionally. And Dr. Bob, he needed to know the nature of the illness. He already had the spiritual stuff going on in the background, and the nature of the illness is what kind of got him sober. Like, that was the missing piece. So you need all the pieces.
Yeah. And step 1 is so important, because if you don't understand step 1 in its entirety, you won't seek the rest of the solution. You'll piecemeal it. And like Dr. Bob, for so many years, he couldn't stay sober. But then Bill showed up at his house and talked to him, not about Bob's drinking, about his own drinking. How when he picked it up and put the first sip in, he was no longer drinking to escape. He was drinking to overcome the physical craving in his body beyond his mental control. And at a certain point, he had no effective mental defense, probably talked to, Bob about all these mental defenses that he used, but then he found himself baffled and he was drunk again. And Dr. Bob's like, hey, that's me. And then from there, it kind of grew, right? And Dr. Bob would never do amends. And finally, this guy, there's a story behind this too, but he finally went and did all of his amends. And Bill and Lois thought he was out getting drunk, but he had actually gone out and cleaned his side of the street and then did the rest of the steps. And, Dr. Bob was only in the program for 15 years. And he worked with over, I think it was 5,000 alcoholics in 15 years. He spent his whole life just working with alcoholics once he got the solution. Anyway, so as Roland has, the gates of hell close on him with a clang, he's like desperate, and he's asking the doctor, is there no exceptions? And he's like begging him. And then the doctor says, yes, Roland, there are. There is. Exceptions to cases such as yours have been occurring since early times. Here and there, once in a while, alcoholics have had what are called vital spiritual experiences. To me, these occurrences are a phenomenon. And why is it a phenomenon? Well, it's very similar to the phenomenon of craving, because we don't fully know how it works. And even with the spiritual experience, we don't fully know how that works either. But God is so much more powerful than any of our intellectual minds. God is powerful, so God is a phenomenon, right? They appear, this is it. This is what a spiritual experience is, a vital spiritual experience. They appear to be in the nature of huge emotional displacements and rearrangements. Ideas, emotions, and attitudes which were once the guiding forces of the lives of these men are suddenly cast to one side, and a completely new set of conceptions and motives begin to dominate them. So what is that? You know, if you go, let's do a quick flip to the back of the book on page 567. We're just going to look at what a spiritual experience says in the big book. So 567. The terms spiritual experience and spiritual awakening are used many times in this book. Upon careful reading shows the personality change sufficient to bring about recovery from alcoholism. That's the key right there. The spiritual experience isn't a profound one moment thing. It's many micro changes in the way that we think and we view life and we view ourselves. We have an ideology of how we are, and you've heard people say, you know, this is just how I am. Well, we got to root what we think and how we are up to see what the truth is. And as we start seeing the different truths, we start changing and bringing those things to light, casting them to one side, and allowing a whole new set of conceptions and motives to dominate us, which is what the steps do, which is what the spiritual principles do. So I take the ego and fear that I live with, I expose it for what it is, and then I cast it aside and I bring in God and I bring in prayer, meditation, pillars, and I do all these things. So anyway, it's a personality change. And if you don't change who you are as a person through the personality change, the old person will always drink again, because your ideas, emotions, and attitudes that actually run your life will always hit the trigger that says, I need a drink, I need it now, what's always giving it to me, and then you're drunk again. So these things need to be exposed, extracted, and discarded, and a whole new set of conceptions have to dominate you. The problem is the domination part of these new attitudes is really hard and painful. So let's keep reading. To bring about recovery from alcoholism has manifested itself among us in many different forms. Yet it is true, our first printing gave many readers the impression that the personality changes or religious experience must be in the nature of sudden spectacular upheavals. Happily for everyone, this conclusion is erroneous. In the first few chapters, a number of sudden revolutionary changes are described. Though it was not our intention to create such an impression, many alcoholics have nevertheless concluded that in order to recover, they must acquire immediate and overwhelming God consciousness. See, that's not what we typically need. That's not what's going to happen for most people.